Lethal Company is a game rapidly approaching 2 years old at this point. I feel really old, god dang. And to this day, I do believe that this remains as one of the better games released in the modern day. So many games nowadays come out buggy, unfinished, have paid DLC that just adds in content that should have been available at launch, or require your life savings to make any meaningful progress in the game itself without the grind taking 10 decades. That said, people have covered this game extensively at this point, ranging from tier lists about what loot and moons are the most optimal, how dangerous each entity is, the countless amount of compilations and funny moments, as well as challenges within the game. I know I'm late. However, when going through the loot table on the Lethal Company Wiki the other day, I noticed just how insane some of the credit values are on some of these things. Like, you would expect a rubber duck to not be worth much, but it can potentially outvalue a damn wedding ring. Or an empty soda can reach the same amount of value as a hairdryer. As the first non-Dead by Daylight video on this channel as part of the branch out, today's discussion will be looking at some of these crazy loot values in this game, compare them to other items that should realistically be higher or lower in their value, and trying to make sense of it when applicable. So how exactly are we going to be doing a video like this? Well, as stated in the intro, we're going to be comparing and contrasting credit values between various scrap items. Keep in mind that we're not ranking them either, this isn't a scrap tier list video. Like, yeah, I think we can all agree that the tattered metal sheet that's barely worth anything that you found on experimentation, even at the higher value ranges, while weighing you down a ton, is the worst item in the game. You don't really need me to tell you that. And it's been a little bit since the candy you can find most often on fucking Dine, a moon you have to pay to go to, was funny. There's also factors beyond the scrap's weight to consider in Lethal Company regarding how that scrap was designed, such as the toilet paper being weightless and valuable at the cost of it being two-handed and blocking your vision, the hives and sapsucker eggs being designed as high-risk, high-reward items in mind, stuff like the gold bar and cash registers being really fucking heavy to compensate for their very high worth and rarity, so on and so forth. However, these things don't exist if I don't consider them. They're just not relevant to this discussion since we're talking about the value of the scrap itself. As for how we'll be discussing this, we'll be going over some items in question, their value ranges in-game, comparing them to how valuable they are in real life, and if they're undervalued or overvalued compared to some of the more reasonably priced scraps in this game. Yes, I know this sounds like a really funky topic, but I promise there's some really weird shit in here. I haven't lost my mind just yet, I swear. Starting with the very first item I brought up in the intro, we have the rubber ducky. This adorable little bath time pal can be found most often on Artifice, but it's also found on Vow, Adamance, Rend, Dine, Titan, and apparently the unreleased Liquidation. Upon picking them up, they make a little quacking sound like, you know, you'd expect a rubber duck to make. That's kind of what they do. And they can range between 2 to 100 credits. This can make the duck a little bit of a wild card since its value can be so drastically different. On some days, they'll be borderline not worth the effort to carry around, while other times they're worth a ton. You would think a rubber duck wouldn't get to 100 credits worth. The minimum price for the rubber duck makes complete sense, assuming you're not buying a super customized or specialty rubber duck. The average price of these things tend to be in the single digits on Amazon. So for a plain rubber duck to be worth 100 credits maximum, that duck better be made of pure gold because, I don't know about you, but you're basically scamming the company monster on Gordian out of the credits with this thing. Hell, this thing in-game can potentially match stuff that would be infinitely more useful in IRL applications such as a hairdryer, a bottle of perfume, toilet paper, and oh, I don't know, a shotgun? Hell, this thing on a good day can outsell the fucking Apparatus, the thing that powers the entire factory interior. Like, sit down and pause the video for a second, disregard the game mechanics, and think about it. An itty-bitty rubber ducky can potentially outvalue what's basically a giant industrial-grade battery. Done? Cool. While we're on the rubber duck, I suppose we could bring the Z-Dog into this equation as well, as this thing is basically the rubber duck on crack. It has a credit range of 1 to 199, and it can be found most often on Assurance and Offense, but can appear on March, Vow, Ren, Dine, and Artifice. It has the distinction of being the rarest item in the game to run into, with Offense and Assurance only having a 0.12% chance of it spawning. As I brought up a bit ago, this plush toy is one of the game's composers, is basically a much more extreme version of the rubber duck, having the potential to be the worst item in the game if you're unlucky. While at best, it's outperforming every single scrap except the gold bar on a good day in terms of value. There's not really a whole lot more to really talk about regarding the Zed dog, since it kind of just shares a lot of the points the rubber duck has. The only major difference besides plushies being more expensive than the generic rubber duck in real life is that the Zed dog is conductive and will attract lightning in stormy weather. Now, how a plushie is attracting the wrath of Zeus is beyond me, but the little tinfoil hat theory I've come up with to maybe try and explain this is that there's a metal voice box inside the plush that's responsible for the plush barking upon picking it up, and that's not only causing the lightning to target the dog, but also skyrocket its value to what it is. Honestly, I think it's just best to not think about it all too much, in all honesty. We are talking about the casual proxy chat game where you watch your friends become 5-star voice actors and die in stupid ways to the eyeless dogs after all.
Why are there turns? Oh my god! What the fuck? Oh, fuck. You too?
The next scrap item I want to talk about today is the one that speedrunners of this game know to avoid like the plague, the Beehives. These scrap items are one of 2 in the entire game that can spawn outside on Experimentation, Assurance, Vow, Adamance, Artifice, and have the highest spawn rate on March. Their values ranging from 50 to 150 credits. These things, to be blunt, are insanely valuable, but have the downside of coming with circuit bees guarding them, meaning cooperation with others or a lot of skill if you're playing solo are required to grab a hold of these things. They're well worth the effort though, as even just 2 or 3 of these with decently good prices can carry you through the first couple quotas by themselves. Their high variance is the reason speedrun.com has them banned and restricted to subcategories of quota 1 to 3 speedruns. Trivia aside, hives have the potential to outvalue a lot of the higher tier scraps in this game, and when looking into why this is in universe beyond Zeekerss felt like it and it's the high risk high reward item, there honestly isn't really one. The hive itself is considered conductive by the game, so at first I wondered if the hive was made of some kind of metal. Real-life beehives are made of honeycomb and a substance known as propolis, which is basically just resin created from a mixture of bee saliva, beeswax, tree buds, and other botanical sources. So I wondered if a circuit beehive did something similar, but with a more metallic or conductive material. A quick glance at the circuit bee's bestiary entry ends up shutting this down though, as not only are circuit bees descendants of honeybees, they also share the same building material for their nests. As a result, the only thing I can think of regarding nest conductivity is the nest having leftover bees still inside the hive even when it's stolen, since the entry also says that the bees will leave behind their queen and the drones when defending the hive. And given how circuit bees can attract lightning, this is most likely the case. As for its value, circuit bee honey must bang incredibly hard and sell well, as this thing often matches the high tier moon scrap values. Delicious, in-demand honey combined with said honey's source being killer bees that can produce electricity, I'd say the credit source for the hive being high makes sense. Although the hives outperforming something like the Apparatus or a jug of chemicals is up for debate. I've already brought up the Apparatus a couple times, so let's make that our next scrap discussion. The Apparatus is a scrap item that can appear on every moon if the building interior is the factory one, and it will always be 80 credits guaranteed, no variation. You would think 80 credits is a really good number for a giant battery, and you would be correct. However, take a look at the rest of the loot table. Everyday items that would be much less valuable in real life when compared to this thing, especially on the paid moons, outperform it. Like, obviously stuff like a cash register, some really high quality paintings, or a gold bar would outsell what's basically a big ass industrial battery. But someone explain to me what's making a hairdryer, perfume bottle, a lamp, and a laser pointer potentially outsell this thing. Not to mention this thing can have the same value as a fucking pack of toilet paper. The problem here isn't that the Apparatus isn't sold at a high price, it absolutely is. Grab that shit at the end of the day when you see it. The issue here is that it's actually quite undervalued compared to some more mundane things that wouldn't be as useful in real life, such as being a power source for a building. There's not really much of a realistic explanation here I can think of beyond game balancing for the early game moons where the factory is your interior most of the time. The closest I can maybe think of is that there's just not a lot of demand for apparatuses compared to some other stuff, or the quality of the apparatus is degraded thanks to the lack of maintenance. All the moons are deserted of human life after all. Who knows when the factory interior last had upkeep. The last piece of scrap here I wanted to talk about for this video is the wedding ring. A scrap often found on Artifice, but also appears on Titan, Rend, Dyne, Experimentation, and once again, the unused Liquidation. They range for 58 to 79 credits, which is fairly decent, but a lot less than you would expect a wedding ring to be worth. I don't know about you, but these things can get very, very pricey in real life, often going into thousands of dollars if you want to get an authentic quality one that includes gemstones. Looking at the wedding ring model, the gemstone it uses is a deep blue color, meaning unless this is just a really blue diamond, I'm going to assume this is a sapphire. And yeah, this shit's expensive. Given that the credit amount doesn't nearly match a quality engagement ring's pricing when comparing them, I'm willing to bet that the wedding ring in Lethal Company isn't a quality one, but rather a phony, cheap version. There's nothing in-game that really proves this isn't the case, as there's basically no information about the scrap beyond its appearance, it's conductive, and it's surprisingly cheap for a ring like this. Ultimately, there's just not really enough information to know whether this is indeed a fake ring, or Zeekerss decided to make a wedding ring get outvalued by a hairdryer for the funny, which, I mean, I don't blame them, it is. But for the purposes of the video and drawing conclusions, I'm going to assume the ring is fake, as that's the only logical conclusion to the ring being outvalued by said hairdryer. Maybe the credit system works entirely different to traditional currency in this universe, which, I mean, I would not disagree with that, given this is a video game and all. We're not supposed to take this shit seriously. But that would make this video topic more boring if I didn't treat it like actual IRL money and values. Lethal Company's scrap system is quite balanced for the most part, the earlier moons having weaker scraps, the higher tier moons having the good stuff. There's some that are heavy and obscure vision while carrying them, there's some that require risking death to acquire them, and some of them actually have uses as weapons or just have additional functions that are just neat. It's what you'd expect from a game that requires you to meet a profit quota at the end of 3 days, but when you remove the added stuff like weight and other factors and just focus on the scrap's values, it becomes quite funny comparing the scrap we'd expect to be more valuable getting outdone by something stupid like a hairdryer or a rubber duck that have no business being as potentially valuable as they are. If you enjoyed the video and you want to see more videos like this, feel free to leave a like, subscribe to the channel, and join the community Discord. Let me know in the comments why you think a hairdryer in Lethal Company outsells 90% of the scrap in this game without factoring the game design reasons. And with that in mind, cheers!